Our job at the end of the day, the mandate of our fund and most venture capital firms is, we have to make sure that the companies are supported. We make sure that they're making sensible decisions, that they're not making kind of reckless decisions. And that's where the governance comes in to some extent. But ultimately, we're trying to create a return for our shareholders whilst trying to add to the world in making startups and products that benefit people's lives. That's what we're trying to do. So we do whatever we can to achieve that, and we have a big network around us that helps us do that.
One of the things that we heard from another VC is that, yes, there's the market, yes, there's the team, et cetera, but come to me with a plan. So, don't just say, I've got this great product, I've got the team, I've got blah, blah, blah. Show me how you're going to execute. And it's not cast in concrete because, as you just said, things change. You've got to pivot from time to time, but come with a plan. So do you see people coming with a plan, or do you see people, as you said earlier, just wanting to talk about the product or service and the technology and the market, but
Yeah,
no plan?
it's a big mix. I mean, the best founders that pitch come along and they understand where they are today, how they got there, and where they're going tomorrow. I mean, it's as simple as that. And you'd be amazed, even just the where they are today, how many founders don't really know the numbers. They couldn't really tell you off the top of their head what their current MRR is, or the amount of contracts that are signed and not yet coming into the P&L, or whatever it might be. And you've got to be on top of that stuff. And then in terms of the vision and the plan, as you say, it's less about, I often see these pie charts at the end of, I'm going to spend this much on marketing, this much on, it's less about that. It's more about founder having a almost kind of uncanny understanding of the market, of what they're trying to do, why it helps people, where the product market fit comes from, a really clear vision of that, and then how they're going to get there. And it constantly changes and evolves and adapts, and that's just life. I mean, nobody expected COVID to come along. But a founder that comes in tells you, how they got to where they are now, has a very strong understanding of where they're at, all their numbers, the business, everything like that, and then a very clear vision of where they're going and why and how. That's really the story you're looking for. And then what we can do is we can go away and we can DD and make sense of the market, whether we think that's, there's enough space in the market, whether we think the product's differentiated enough, it's got a big enough moat, looking to the team, their executing ability, the product, all of these things. But that's what you're looking for, I think, from the key kind of founding team.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because what you say, I'm an engineer by background, so process and detail and those kinds of thoughtful elements really resonate with me. But this is just kind of an off the wall question. How did these big failures like WeWork and Theranos and some of these, how did they, because the investors presumably were sophisticated people. I mean, I know some of the stories, but how do those things happen, in your opinion? I mean, just talk to us a little bit about some of those.
I think you've got to be really wary of anything that looks a bit too good to be true. So, we're very conscious of that. And I think, there was a time a few years ago where there were a lot of companies in the UK and in the US that were kind of growth at all costs, a lot of capital coming in.
Fake it till you make it,
Fake it
right?
till you
Fake
make
it till you
it,
make
yeah.
it.
But just a lot of capital coming in and that driving the growth. And you just absolutely, and really, so if you're an engineer, it's like a control system. I'm an engineer too. It's like a control system, and you've got parameters coming in and it's a loop, but there's lots of lag in the system. So it's very difficult to really unpick whether there's real value in this product or whether it's really, you're buying users at the end of the day, you're spending huge amounts of marketing that will drive adoption. And it's this big kind of lagging failure that's growing really fast now, but you're just storing up a huge problem in the future. And so what we try and do is get to the bottom of that. I mean, we obviously invest in quite early stage companies, but we get to the bottom of that through data and analysis. So you can do things like look at cohort analysis and understand, when someone subscribes for a product or signs up, how engaged they are over time, which is a great proxy for churn risk. So, are they still signing in with the product? Are they using the product? Is that falling off each month? Even if they've got a 12-month contract, if they're starting not to engage after month 4 or 5, or if they have the chance, they might go. We also look at a lot of capital efficiency metrics too. So you can do some quite clever stuff almost looking at the company like a black box and saying, you're injecting this much capital into it. How efficient is the enterprise value growth, taking into account all the capital you're putting in? Because if you put loads of capital into a company, then it really should grow quite quickly, but you're trying to create long, sustainable enterprise value in the company, not just a quick peak. So those things happen, and sometimes in those companies, we don't really invest in those kind of super hyped up companies. But sometimes in those companies, it can get so big that it's sort of like a fait accompli, and it does work. And certainly in the dot-com boom, that happened a lot. But these days, people are a lot more careful. I think investors are holding onto the purse strings a bit more tightly, so it's less likely that really comes off.